Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm really excited to be here at Andrews University's first Lifestyle Medicine Symposium with you all. And those who are tuning in on Facebook Live, also welcome. My name is Jackie, and I am a student at Andrews University. I work for University Health and Wellness, so here I am. I have the honor to present our first speaker, Dr. Katia Reinert, who is a family nurse practitioner with a PhD in nursing from Johns Hopkins University. She also focuses on health outcomes and religious involvement among adult survivors of childhood trauma, and she has published scientific research, articles, books, periodicals, and is a peer review for professional journals. So she is a very interesting person to get to know. So I invite Dr. Katia to come up, Dr. Reinert, and please welcome her.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, it's good to be. Am I too loud? Are you okay? I want to invite those of you who are watching also from wherever you are through Facebook Live to really tune in, because we want you to participate as we talk this morning. And let's see if this is working over here. I want to just tell you how much happy I am to be here, to be part of this. And because, you know, what the Department of Health and Wellness that Andrews is doing can really make a difference, and I can see already how it's changing the environment here on campus, and also now going out to reaching wherever you are with a message that we can, yes, be fully alive. Is that right? Do you believe it? Okay. Well, today we are starting out our morning to talk about something that many people don't feel it's linked so much with being alive, but it is. And so I'm glad to see that I'm going to just end this and start again. Maybe you'll be able to see what we have. Okay. And so oftentimes we think of being fully alive by exercise, by physical activity, and all those things that are great. And I know we're going to do a lot of that this morning or today. We also think of food, and that's wonderful. But many times we don't realize how much stress can really impact our lives, right? So this morning, when we look at stress, there was a recent study done by the American Psychological Association that asked people and people here in America, what stresses you the most? What are some of the things that really make you feel stressed? Common sources of stress. And as you can see here, number one, 63%, the future of our nation has been stressing people. 62% said money is a big issue. Financial issues or needs. Work can be stressful. It's third in their list, followed by current political climate in this country, and then violence and crime, right? So these are some of the things that they found out. And some of these are real. They also found out that people who are not able to access health insurance, that are uninsured, they're more stressed than people who do. And so as you can see here, a little bit more stress on the uninsured side than those that have access. So there are many reasons why people can be stressed. When they were asked what do they do to cope with their stress, here you can see various things. Listening to music, exercising, or going for a walk are on the top list, followed by actually praying. Many people go to their spiritual resources and find that very helpful. And then meditation or yoga, other kinds of stretching and exercises that they use. So this is how people in general in America are handling or thinking about stress. Now, I want to know what you think. And so if you have an Android phone or an iPhone, or if you're watching through Facebook Live, take your phone. I want to see if we can ask a few questions of you so you can be engaged with this. First question, and what you need to do is you can take off your phone and then you type, you direct the message to 37607. That's the number where you text to. And then on the text, you actually write DR Katia, Katia, Reinert, Reinert. Those also watching through Facebook Live, you can participate as well. Simply go in there and then type Dr. Katia Reinert to this. And you can do it right now. We'll see if it's work. If the Wi-Fi is working here, they should let us know. The question is, what are symptoms of acute stress? What are symptoms of acute stress? Is acne one? Is sweating another one? A rapid heart rate? Change in appetite? Or all of the above? Somehow, I don't know if the internet is going here or not, but if you are sending a text, we should be able to see here. Oh, yeah, it's coming now. So I love that. Yes, most of you believe it is all the above, and you are right. It is all of the above. All of the symptoms can be actually physical symptoms of stress. And this is important. Another question. When do you know when these symptoms actually become dangerous? All right, so again, you can type again. A is it makes you snap at your loved one. B is gives you butterflies in your stomach. C is it makes you crave chocolate or sweets. And D, of course, all of the above. And I see already that all of you recognize that all of these can happen with somebody who is stressed. But in fact, there are many things on this list of results from stress that can actually be very dangerous. And if it's interfering on D with all of your ability to live a normal life, that is really when it becomes dangerous. Okay, and you recognize that. You want to watch. Everybody goes through stress in their life one way or another. Yeah, sometimes a little sweet here is okay, a little chocolate there makes you feel better. It's really not really dangerous to you, but when it starts to interfere with your life, with your ability to live all the responsibilities you live for, and also it lasts long, that becomes a problem. So there's 3 types of stress in general. Stress is not a bad thing in itself. It's actually helpful, oftentimes, to allow us to handle the critical moments in our life. If somebody comes at you violently, you want to run away, and so your body gets all worked up so that you can run, right? And so that's okay. But there's 3 types of stressors that most of us face. One, it's called acute stress. This is the stress that, as I said, comes and goes. You know, things happen. You're in a tight week with a lot of exams. You're studying a lot, and you know you're thinking about how prepared you are. That's a normal part of life. And yes, those are acute moments of stress, which can make you a little sometimes more irritable, more anxious, and you know, on and off. It happens to you. You're not choosing to be in that situation. But it also goes away. Sometimes it does have symptoms linked to our emotional well-being, like I said, anxiety, depression, but it's not long-lasting. It will come and it will go. Sometimes people may have muscular problems related to that, pains and aches, sometimes stomach. You may feel a little uneasy with that. People may even have some diarrhea or something that comes as a result, irritable bowel related to that moment. But all of these things, you know, it's acute. It comes unexpectedly, it goes. Now, episodic acute stress is a little different. It's not just a one-time on and off. It's something that periodically happens. And sometimes our choices are related to this. The kind of life that we live, a schedule that's too tight, saying yes all the time, not being able to put boundaries in our life, to be able to really set time aside for adequate rest. This episodic type of stress, those symptoms that follow actually are a little bit more long-lasting. And so because of that, we do have to think about that. This is also very common with type A personalities, very driven and not enough time to rest or to find ways to manage that stress that comes, to prevent the stress. And then, of course, there's number 3, and that's the one we're focusing this morning more readily. It's chronic stress. And chronic stress is a result of many ongoing, year by year, day by day, that lasts a long time, kind of exposure to stress. And chronic stress is different than acute. Acute sometimes can even be exciting. It's a nice thing, if you have a wedding coming up, yeah, you have acute stress during that time and it's over. Well, chronic stress is not fun and is usually caused by unpleasant situations. It could be related to trauma, and it could be related to experiences that we have had that are very negative, a divorce, that, during that time. It could be ongoing kinds of relationship issues or poverty, a situation that it really is there for a long time and that just creates a lot of issues in your life and actually has an impact on your health. And many times keeps people from living a fully alive life. And so this is what I want to focus a little bit today, because the research that we see shows that chronic stress, out of all of these, has the worst impact on our life, all the way from childhood into adulthood. And sometimes people don't even realize that they are in that condition, but their body realizes. And the results come in because of it. So here's another question for you. Some long-term symptoms of stress are, and we just mentioned some of those, so you can again text and answer. Is depression one? Headaches, inability to concentrate, fatigue? Yes, all of the above, as you know. Good students here, and I hope you are also answering through Facebook Live wherever you are. So it is a real thing. Stress, no matter what type, can be linked to that, but especially long-term chronic stress is even more so. Another question, how can it harm your body, especially chronic stress? A, do you think worsening heart disease risk is a reality, such as hypertension, high cholesterol? B, causing you to eat in an unhealthy way in response to stress. C, leading to depression, as we said earlier, but this depression can be linked to heart disease, obesity, and kidney dysfunction. Lowering your immune system is D. So yes, again, all of these things happen because are linked and associated with the chronic stress. So here is the thing. Normally, we talk about living life to the full, living life long and healthy. However, we know that there are many diseases that can cripple us and keep us from living that life to the full. And here are the top leading causes of early death in America, based on a few years back, a study that was done and published in JAMA. And you can see, of course, heart disease, lung cancer, stroke, all of these things, diabetes, even suicide, and many other causes. And normally, we think of these causes as related to our lifestyle and our choices, and it's true. So here are they again. And this is actually a frame or a slide that was put together by Randy Johnson, who was a public health officer in Marquette County here in Michigan. And so he looked and he said, let me connect this to the root causes. So here are the 10 leading causes of death. And we often think of them as far as how we choose things on our daily lives. Do we choose to use tobacco? Do we choose to eat unhealthy or healthy, or, depending? So they linked all these 10 leading causes of death with these risk factors, which oftentimes I'm sure you have learned and hear about. Substance abuse, activity patterns, many other things that are in our environment. And so normally we say if we avoid those things, we can avoid the risks related to the 10 leading causes of death. However, oftentimes we miss out on the fact that many times even these activities here, these behaviors, these choices related to activity, diet, tobacco use, drug use, whatever it may be linked to something deeper. It's not simply, I want to eat to become obese and, that's what I want to do. Oftentimes there's something that is linked that causes people to eat the way they eat, to use alcohol or drugs the way they do, or to do the behaviors that they do. And these are what we call root causes for the behaviors. So when we talk about being fully alive, we're not just talking about the activity itself or the things that we do, but what is behind of what motivates us to do that. And what are some of the things that you would think that are behind that? Well, one of the top ones is indeed related to stress, external, internally, that we face. And these things all are related to a mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. You can see here low self-esteem, low self-worth, meaningless existence, having a lack of purpose in our lives. But a top one is related to external and internal stresses that we face. So in other words, stress, if not managed well, and even if we are receiving chronic stress from early childhood, it happens that can be a risk factor to lead us to eat in a certain way, to behave in a certain way, and then can be linked to all these 10 leading causes of death. So how so? What happens? Well, we do know that in a case of acute stress or a situation that's unexpected, our brain responds to it with a whole lot of chemicals. Some, like cortisol, will help you run in a fight situation. As I mentioned, somebody comes at you, you just need to run, so your brain receives that. And that level of cortisol, short term, is appropriate. It's helpful. When you are studying for an exam here in the school and you need to be attentive and focused, you need that kind of chemistry in your brain to focus. And so it's helpful. But it becomes a problem when it's linked to the chronic exposure to these chemicals in the brain, these neurotransmitters or other kinds of hormones that are released. And so oftentimes we miss that when we look at some of the risk factors that we see for longevity. It was Oprah who said not long ago, my greatest failure in terms of her weight, she was trying to manage her weight, was in believing that the weight issue was just about the weight. It's not. It's about not handling stress properly. It's about sexual abuse, and some of you know about her history. And so she said it's about all the things that cause other people to become alcoholics as well as drug addicts. So here, she's pointing out the root causes of those behaviors that, in fact, in her case, have contributed to obesity in her life. And so it was very hard for her to deal with it. And so this cartoon explains that well. And it shows that, indeed, people sometimes hide what's really deep inside. And we can use nice makeup, nice clothes, whatever, but oftentimes we are very afraid to talk about our real experiences. And so the CDC, some time ago, decided to look at this. There was actually a doctor, Dr. Felici, some of you might have heard about him, and he decided, because he had an obesity clinic, to look deeper into this issue of stress, chronic stress, all the way from childhood and how it was linked to their patients. The patients, some of them did well losing weight, others did not. And so when he started to analyze those that were having a hard time with their weight, losing weight in his obesity clinic, he realized that all of them, 98% of them, had issues with trauma early on. And so he started to do a study, and eventually that became part of a large national study that has looked at this issue of stress. And so how does it work? Again, now that we have really looked more closely to it, we see that whatever happens early on as a child leaves a record in the brain, in the body, and that alters how the brain works. And so the nature of this alteration depends on the event and on the exposure to that, the nature of the events. And so they have found that adverse childhood experiences, and can be a number of them, then may alter the development of that child. And the result of that will be taken all the way to the adult life. And people don't realize that chronic exposure to stress is actually increasing their risk for many other things, such as physical and mental illness. And so this study eventually became a large, and still a very large study, funded by CDC, and is now being done in pretty much every state. It's become part of many of the culture for health professionals in doing what we call trauma-informed care, because we realize that there is a big problem, an increased risk with people that have gone through those tough experiences. So it's been a cooperative study between CDC and Kaiser. That's how it got started. And Felici, the lead PI on this, the principal investigator, along with Robert Nanda, said this: many adult public health problems that we normally think of, remember, the leading causes of death and other things, and chronic diseases are determined decades earlier during childhood, not by diseases of childhood as once was the case, but by the life experiences. And so a child may not even remember what happened to them early on, but the body remembers. And this has been then something that has really raised our awareness greatly. Here are the experiences that the Adverse Child Experiences Study has included in the survey that they have had. First, abuse, and that could be mental or emotional abuse, sexual abuse. It could be also physical abuse, and neglect, emotional and physical neglect. Then other kinds of household dysfunction that can also be very traumatic for a child. And that could be domestic violence against the mother specifically. That's what they saw was more damaging. Substance abuse in the home, someone using alcohol or other kinds of drugs. Depression or mental illness in the household. Somebody in the household having a history of mental illness or depression. Parental separation or divorce. Parents were divorced early on. That also has an impact. And somebody in the household being incarcerated. So these were the 10 kinds of factors and questions that were asked of these adults now in the obese clinic back when this was started. But now, of course, it's been asked of anyone. And so what they found is that the greater the number of these childhood experiences, the increased risk for chronic conditions, physical problems and mental health problems. And many of these then are what we consider linked to those top killers. So look at here, for instance, those that had the greatest number and had some kind of traumatic experience had a huge, much greater risk for suicide attempts or the actual incidence of suicide attempts, much greater risk of depression compared to those that had not had those experiences, as you can see here, 460% greater. Decreased health-related quality of life in general. Alcoholism, huge increased incidence. Illicit drug users, current smoking. So these are all related to mental, emotional issues or behavior issues that are linked to those top killers and that are increasing the risk factors for chronic disease. And not only that, here's another list of other things. You can see the link to severe severe obesity being greater. You can see the link to cancer, much, almost 200-fold here, 200%. Stroke, diabetes, ischemic heart disease, all these things that are preventing people from living a life fully alive and living to the full. And so here you see many of these things, and that's just the reality. So you can see why people are concerned about finding out what is happening in people's lives in regards to trauma and to chronic stress. And you can see here that people that had at least 6 of those 10 experiences, they actually died younger, 20 years earlier on average, than people who did not have those experiences or had less than 6. And so it's a huge issue. Here's how it works. All these adverse childhood experiences, depending the number where they are, if they did have that experience, that disrupted the neurodevelopment, as we just mentioned, and then will create cognitive, emotional, and social impairment. That's what the research has pointed out. And then that makes people to adopt, or encourages people to adopt unhealthy behaviors, as we saw, and that would lead to disability, disease, and social problems, which in fact will lead to early death. Do you see the connection? So this is a huge issue. The summary of the study is that indeed it increases the risk for early death, for disease, chronic disease, and particularly addiction. That's how they saw, because people numb those experiences with things that are not unhealthy. And so you see here that it leads, the ACE is a leading determinant of health among people of many different cultures or around in this country, ethnicities and backgrounds is a major factor underlying addictions. And you can see that it's important for us to consider, what have I experienced? And now, not just accept that as there's nothing I can do, but the beautiful thing is that there is something called resilience that helps us to reverse this kind of risk for people who are actually have been exposed to this. How does this work? There are what we call stress mediators. So stress mediators, for let's say, here's your brain, and you perceive stress in a certain way. It could have been trauma or abuse that you have had in your life or that you're currently experiencing. Could have been major life events that can also, as we talked earlier, be linked to acute stress. Or it could be environmental factors at home, at work, in your neighborhood that are ongoing. It can contribute to chronic stress or to episodic stress, as we saw, episodic acute. So what happens is, what does mediate the impact that has? We know that, yes, there's physiological responses to that perceived threat, and that your body has what we call a certain allostatic load, meaning those experiences that come from all those areas, environmental stressors, major life events, trauma, they all, depending how your brain perceives it, it all will impact your physiological response, and that can, as we saw earlier, be linked to the stress response of the body and create risk for early disease, early death, and some of those chronic issues. But there are mediators, and these are either individual differences or behavioral responses that we can have. On the individual differences side, yes, the genes have a weight, the developmental experiences that we have had and the experience that we have, all that could change how the body responds. And more importantly, and that's the focus of what we're talking a lot about today, there are choices, there are behavioral responses that we can adopt that can either be helpful or not. And those behavioral responses are related to, yes, whether or not you're going to use alcohol or smoking to deal with that issue, or food to deal with that issue, or whether you're going to exercise or not, or rest or not. Those things can actually be personal choices, and they can actually make an impact as well. And so that, as we look at the research done in resilience, shows that there is an impact. I don't know how many of you have read and studied resilience. Anyone here? I see not many hands, but resilience is something that people used to say, oh, you were born with it. Either you're born smiling and everything's great and you deal with the issue, or not. But research has shown that that's not the case, that actually we learn and we develop over time this ability to cope, to be positive despite the experiences we have had, and help the body, turn around and just bounce back to other kinds of things, and be able to help us to reduce the trauma effect in our body. And so this is important because it's a lifelong process. And recently there has been a huge focus on, in fact, there's a movie that came out, Resilience, the Biology of Stress and Science of Hope, showing what we can do to reverse this whole process. And basically what we have found is that there are many things, when they looked at the studies that show the impact of these behaviors that we can have to reverse the issue, the result of trauma in the body, we see that these are factors for resilience. Positive emotions, cultivating the positive in our life, having cognitive flexibility to reframe those negative experiences, and using humor has also been helpful. Accepting things we cannot change, but changing the things we can. Does that sound familiar from 12 Steps? Religion and spirituality are a big issue. As we saw, many people cope using prayer and their connection and faith in God. Altruism, trying to help others that are in a worse situation than we are. Social support is critical. Having people we can count on that can tell us how important we are and love we are and accept us how we are and can help us when we need. Having role models, people that have dealt with their circumstances in a way that really is inspiring to us. And then, of course, exercise and sleep. These are the factors that have been pointed out, very important even in the adult life, to help people overcome and build resilience in the face of trauma. So I just want to encourage all of us to look at our own lives and be able to make choices that can build resilience in our life. And as we end, here's an opportunity for you, and I will read it out because it might be small for you to read, but what coping mechanism would be, in your case, most helpful to build resilience as you face chronic stress? And you can pick. A says seeking medical help and professional counseling. That's very important, especially for people that have early trauma. Is that what you would think? Talking to a trusted family friend, is that helpful to you? A teacher, somebody you trust, a family member, or a pastor. Using your faith, and you can pick more than one on this, by the way, but using your faith in God in a positive way and praying more about it, is that something that is helpful, most helpful to you? Developing healthy boundaries, learning how to say no or not to be in a relationship when it's damaging and being able to come out of that. Reframing your thinking with optimism and keeping a gratitude journal. We have seen that people that are more grateful, they have less impact, negative impact in their health, even in the case of trauma, in the setting of trauma. Forgiving someone who has hurt you. Exercising regularly. Ensuring adequate rest and relaxation, listening to music, or even helping someone less fortunate. These are some of the factors that we know builds resilience, and I can see here in this audience, and those of you also participating where you are through Facebook Live, it seems like the number one way, coping mechanism for this group is using your faith in God and using prayer and really being positive as you use your spiritual resources. That is followed by exercising regularly. That's wonderful. Learning how to keep the healthy boundaries. And I'm glad to see, and I hope that as you think through these factors for resilience, you can make a choice today to really incorporate this more. And the beautiful thing is that we can, as we do this for our own lives, we can help others around us who we know are also facing this situation. So thank you so much. I hope this was helpful and hope that we can use this to be fully alive.